Greetings, beloveds. Welcome back. Philip, Daniel, Miles, and myself here to talk about Saturn going retrograde, and a bunch of other things. Welcome, Philip, and thank you so much for spending some time with me and sharing this space. It's always really cool to catch up with you.
Absolutely a pleasure to share and connect with you, Anastasia. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you for creating with me and sharing yourself with me. This is a fantastic opportunity to broaden our scope and dial into the power of Saturn. And this is such a powerful moment. When planets are stationary, they're said to be at their most powerful conjecture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with planets stopping dead, which is what's happening with Saturn as we speak, it's just literally stopped. There seems to be some I suppose various kind of opinions, but my understanding at least is that when a planet has stopped, it's actually at such a powerful point in frequency, extremely powerful actually. It seems like nothing's going on because it's actually, stopped in its tracks, as it were, but it's literally a portal that just, is full of potential. Actually, the energy is pulsating in a very intense or very live kind of way. So yeah, I have to agree with that.
Yeah, for me, just witnessing the experience these past couple of days, it's a bit like, not to be over Saturn, but it's very rational. It's a bit like if you take Saturn as this analogy of being a suitcase. It's like, okay, well, everything out. What have you got in your suitcase, and what do you want to keep in your suitcase? How are you going to ensure that it's fully zipped up because it was bulging out, half open, spilling all over the place? And what are you going to do to ensure that you can maybe declutter and formulate it in a more manageable way, so that moving forward, we're able to prosper on whatever vocation or vacation or whatever you want to do with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love it when planets are stationary, about to go retrograde. I have 5 planets retrograde in my own natal chart actually, and I really love the retrograde process because I'm naturally a very reflective and introspective kind of person. And when planets begin to go stationary retrograde, and then they do go retrograde depending on the planet and therefore how long it will remain retrograde, I find it a really powerful journey, a new journey each time actually, to further reflect and be introspective, because I love that kind of feeling or that space, or consciously being aware of going into that space. I feel very naturally connected to that. I love it when planets go retrograde, especially Saturn. I love it. I feel it's an opportunity for us to really step back. And given the nature of reality and everything that's been going on the last couple of years, we don't need to go on about that. We all are aware of what's been going on. But I think in terms of where we are right now, on the planet and collectively, with all the different storylines that are playing out, we really have now an opportunity to just go in and check in, in our own self, if you like, the inner structures. Well, the structures that I have internally within me are going to reflect the perspective I have on my external structures, right? So the retrograde journey takes us in to check all that out. And as you said before, to using the suitcase analogy, to check in the suitcase, as it were, which is checking within, right? And seeing what structures are there that actually you have created yourself, or what structures are there that are basically conditioned from the consensus world, the consensus reality, which is Saturn. So every time Saturn goes retrograde, it gives us that opportunity to go in and actually check that out for ourselves and restructure what is a more natural state of structure for our life, for who we are, and for the life moving forward, I suppose, you know. So yeah.
Totally. There's a very fine antithesis of what you just describing. It can be that we might feel that we need to get married. We might feel that we need a certificate to say that I'm good enough for this or that. We might feel that we need to dress a certain way because of the regulations of what society has put in place for us to see what deems credibility or respect. But actually, these are projections, or they're superimposed impressions, because we're also impressionable. When we're born into a certain society construct, we all kind of go along with it until we recognize maybe this isn't actually the way it has to be. Maybe this isn't sustainable. Maybe this isn't comfortable. Maybe this isn't who I am. And so this is a very powerful moment as well with this Saturn, I feel like, for breaking society belief systems, national belief systems, gender belief systems, class belief systems, especially as within this Saturn retrograde, we're recognizing a closing square, final aspect between, final closing square between Uranus and Saturn, of which is a 44-year cycle, which started 33 years ago. And so it's like, which was basically Saturn and Uranus meeting on the galactic center in 1988, together at 28 degrees of Sagittarius, which is about international belief systems, society structures, and radicalizing against them. I mean, little did we know potentially then, or the astrologers of the day, that actually we'd be growing into the opportunity to really break the bandwidth of what was condoned as normal, or from even before that. I mean, I was only 2 years old then, but there was people who were 22 years old or 44 years old at that point who are still alive now, and now they're breaking the spell of what they were born into at their stage as well.
Yeah, that's an awesome point, actually. And to add to that, you know, with the work of Dane Rudyard, The Last Quarter Square, he calls crisis in consciousness. And I reframe that by saying it's crisis in thinking. Because when you use the term crisis in consciousness, it doesn't it doesn't really speak to the everyday kind of way of thinking of life, as it were, right? It's a term that could mean a lot of different things, but I think when you bring it down to crisis in thinking, it really just pinpoints what that last quarter square really speaks to. So it's about the crisis in our own thinking, meaning what we perceive, right? Our ideas, what we've been conditioned with. And it's a reorientation of all of that, so that when we come out of that last quarter square, we have a new, clear, fresh understanding or perspective in our own thinking that's not conditioned, but that is our own, based on our own reflection and our own understanding, right? As opposed to being told by the external world what I should think, what I should believe, what I should do or should not do, right? And Saturn, you know, has a very heavy dose of that in the mundane world, because this reality is governed by Saturn. There's no two ways about that. I mean, Saturn, it depends how deep one wants to go. You know, esoterically and in medieval astrology, you know, Saturn rules the magician. So there are many, many deep, complex layers to Saturn, but just in terms of the everyday life that we experience on that everyday level, Saturn is the limitations. You know, it is what's dictated to us from outside of ourselves relative to what we shouldn't do, and so on and so forth. The thing that I wanted to mention, actually, did you have something to say there? Or?
Yeah, interesting about, as you say, that the comparison between the roles of Saturn, between the mundane and the magician role. It's a bit like, actually, if you learn to play with Saturn in a mundane way, you actually gain the keys to working as a magician, because you become Saturn and you move past what might seem like an ordeal, and you can find that actually it's the due diligence and the tactile application of oneself that opens up the discipline and awareness of what lays beneath the surface level. And it's this, as you say, the difference between a a waning closing square is a bit like the interior or a retrograde, and the opening waxing square is more of an external. So it's like I'm dealing with surface level, mundane fixtures, physical stuff, and I'm dealing with spiritual consciousness or perception based stuff.
Absolutely. Also, it's that the last quarter square, it's really getting clear, I think, within your own self relative to what you've believed, perhaps, you know, what you've been told to believe. It's really getting to the core of understanding what you actually do need to discard because it doesn't belong to you. It's just a conditioned template, you know, through society, through family, through upbringing, through past lives. It goes on and on and on, really. So when we have these last quarter square cycles with Saturn and any planet, really, it is always an opportunity to go in and, you know, reflect on that and recognize, well, I have a belief in X, Y, Z. Now, where does that belief come from? Where did I learn that? How did I establish that belief? Why do I have that perspective? Is it something that was fed to me from out there, or did I come to my own realization about this? You know, so it's always an opportunity to go back to that space. And in terms of what you were saying before as well about, you know, Saturn, I suppose, teaching us to be more disciplined or due diligence. I think you used that word, you know. Yeah. Well, it is all of that. And it's primarily, it is the ongoing journey of integration, right? Because, I mean, the more integrated we are with any archetype, with any frequency, the less we are likely to project, right? That's, you know, a fundamental truth. Now, people born with Saturn retrograde tend to be, and this is generally speaking, tend to be more the type of souls that will generally not buy into that external reality in terms of the conditions of what one is told relative to who they should be, that they should get married, that they should have this job, that they should be doing X, Y, Z. That the Saturn retrograde people, natives, will figure it out themselves. What they initially tend to feel is, I don't buy into this bullshit. This game out there, I don't feel like I fit in. I don't feel like I belong in it. So where do I belong? And so thus starts the journey of the soul figuring out where they stand with what they actually believe themselves. Saturn retrograde people will naturally take on that journey consciously or unconsciously, right? But people who have Saturn who's not retrograde at birth will go through the different journeys and experiences of having the Saturn out there tell that person what's expected, you know, the norms, the rules, you know, laws, etc., etc. And they'll have to figure it out along the way relative to, okay, how much of that do I want to buy into? How much of that is actually controlling my sovereignty, how I feel that I need to be, how I feel that I need to live my life? Do I live my life totally free within myself as a sovereign being, or do I live my life where I am constantly worried and thinking about, if I do this, what is that person going to think? If I dress like this, you know, is that the right way that I should appear in, you know, all those sorts of things. My point is that people who have Saturn retrograde are less likely to be concerned with those things, right? And yeah, people who don't have Saturn retrograde are more likely to be influenced by the consensus reality. But that's a generalized statement because it does depend on other things.
Well, I can see, in my experience of Saturn, which I have direct, is that it was suppressing for me for a long time because the reality wasn't allowing for me or condoning me in being who I was in the process of schooling or this or that. I also didn't ever meet my father. So for me, there was not this representation of what was acceptable or how to be. I have Chiron opposite my Saturn though, and Saturn square Jupiter. So I was learning about these belief systems and how actually through time, I started to not really care about other people's so much permission slips in being self, and recognized that where I actually, especially when it comes to literature, let's just keep it at that. So I wasn't celebrated for my writing or my spelling or things like this, or what do you call it? Grammar, this kind of thing. When I was at school, wasn't celebrated. I was penalized, if anything, and told I was lazy or held back or whatever, things like this. But I found out now I'm really quite a wordsmith. I'm really good with these words. And thank you. It took me so much, like really, through practice. Like it didn't. It's only the past 2 years, and I'm like 35. Like it's only these past handful of years that I've recognised that I'm really good at writing. It's not something. I mean, I've become better at it as I've practiced, but the gift was always there. It just wasn't developed because of the encouragement from the external world didn't support the way that I would utilize my linguistics.
That is a brilliant example. Brilliant. A brilliant example of how Saturn can work in such a negative way, particularly when we are born into a society, a culture, a family that Saturn ends up getting presented to us from out there, and we are not supported for our individuality, right? Our individual journey. So it gets the whole judgment thing starts to come up, right? And I love the example you used, because I personally think you're a brilliant writer. I often read your posts and I love the way you write, the way you communicate. You know, it's amazing. But in terms of the consensus Saturn reality, you know, that it's really sad that someone who is naturally actually really great at something was never supported, right, or recognized in that. And so the reverse happened. You got this judgment, this shame, this shutdown, because you weren't fitting into this little model, you know, that everyone's supposed to fit into, like we are all exactly the same, which we're not, right? So I love the example you gave, and yeah, and I second that. I think you're a great writer. So that was a good example. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And to go one further with it, and it's like, yeah, you can hear I'm fairly confident. I know I'm really good at it now, and I love the feedback that you share with me. It's great. Thank you so much. But these things are that actually those things that we're born into like that, we may work them over, we may revamp them, we may gain some confidence and some security on it. But the doubts can also stay in your bones with Saturn, and it's something you always have to remind yourself with. If you overcome it in this way, then it will come back in another way for us to develop greater confidence with. It's always going to come back around for us to develop greater clarity on, as you say, great word, with Saturn retrograde. And again, that the aspect of a third quarter square is like gaining clarity on things, because it's about the development and dissemination. It's about deconstruction. It's about all of these things which are actually given the negative terminologies, but which are so beneficial and soothing because they take away the pain. So Saturn it's got this scythe, right, in the depiction, or even in the glyph. It's got this wiggly line, which is what do you say? It's the Earth cross and the time wave, or the sine wave. And so it's funny that through time, we do cut ourselves free from these burdensome things that we take on.
Yeah, that's a great example too. I want to bring in a couple of points about Saturn from the point of view of sect, right? And so primarily this wisdom comes from Hellenistic astrology, and I find it really powerful. I've been paying a lot of attention to it of late. I was into it when I first started astrology, and then I just kind of put it in the back of my mind. But the last couple of years, it's really come to the forefront for me, because I've been working a lot with whole sign house charts as well as the quadrant house system. And
Would
so
you say so? The quadrant house system. Can you explain? So you're using that the quadrant house system is like dealing with 4 quarters.
yeah, it's just dealing with well, any of the house systems that's not whole sign, because the whole sign just places everything at 0 degrees, right? And the quadrant, based on which house system you might choose, can have any degree of the zodiac on the ascendant or a house cusp. So we just call it a quadrant house system.
But okay, so that's 30-degree.
Quadrant chart, rather. Yeah. Yeah, quadrant chart, because in whole sign houses, the ascendant ends up in the first house. The MC could end up in the 9th, 10th, or 11th, for that matter. So yeah.
So you mean that they're equal 30-degree divisions.
Yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously you can look at both and both will play out correctly. And so that the best thing I always look at is like the transits and see how they come into effect. But obviously our ascendants always are ascendant. So yes, good observations. I concur.
Yeah. I think it's so valuable to actually look at your whole sign and your quadrant chart. And it's not that one is more powerful than the other or one negates the other. It's got nothing to do with that. It's simply got to do with the fact that they are both accurate, and it's really about understanding at which levels both are speaking to. And my understanding is that whole sign houses is, to put it very simply, is pretty much real time. It's right here, right now. What's happening right now? Just to keep it short. And the quadrant chart seems to reflect what you've actually brought in, and so what you are working with on a karmic level. The whole chart, right? Everything, the whole chart. That's been my observation through looking at my own chart, my family's, people I know, and it seems to show that to me very, very clearly. Yeah. So the thing that I wanted to bring up was the matter of sect. So if you are a night birth, Saturn is the greater malefic. There are 2 malefics, Mars and Saturn. I'm going to use that language. Some people don't like that language, whatever, but I'm going to use the language because I am speaking about a system of astrology that uses that language, right? I'm
You're being straight down the line with us.
I'm not saying that Saturn and
That's
Mars.
prolific, though, isn't it? Like I'm not curving around this. I'm not skirting around the edges. I'm being honest.
Well, I'm an Aries. I'm going to give it direct, so that's me. So
Appreciate. We wouldn't want to learn any other way because that just wouldn't be just, would it?
well, everyone has a different style. Some people like my style, some people don't. Each to their own, right? So yeah. So as I was saying, if you are a night birth, Saturn is the greater malefic for you. Okay, and I want to give a few really valid pointers about that in a moment. And so just to also give the difference, if you are a day birth, okay, Mars is then considered to be the greater malefic for you. Okay, that's the first point that we need to understand. Night birth, Saturn is the more difficult planet. Day birth, Mars is the more difficult planet. And I've seen the evidence of this in many, 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 many charts, including my own. I'm a night birth, so Saturn is the greater malefic for me. And Saturn has been an incredibly difficult planet in my life, without question.
So when I ask a question, so if you're born in the nighttime or the daytime, so for instance, just stick with this nighttime, and you've got Saturn on the top half or the bottom half of your chart, does that have an effect as well? So like would Saturn in the nighttime prefer to be in the top half, like houses 7 to 12, or would it rather be in the bottom half, which 1 to 6?
It basically just prefers to be near the sun. But the whole sect thing is just to keep it very simple. if you're a night birth, Saturn is the more difficult. If you're a day birth, Mars is the more difficult. And it sounds like a generalized statement, and perhaps it is, but when you start exploring that concept, you'll see it's actually quite accurate. And I'll just share my screen, and I'm just going to, oh sorry, Philip, I hope you didn't mind that being shown.
No, that's fine, don't worry.
Okay. So I'm just going to, and I've spelt his name wrong up there, but anyway, it's Johnny Depp, right? And I'm not going to go into his court case and his winnings and, you know, whatever, right? Good luck to him, I say. But anyway.
I didn't even know he won.
Yes, he did. But that matter aside, that's not what I want to talk about at all today. What I want to demonstrate here is that, so here's a day birth. Right, we can see that the sun is up there on the 11th house cusp.
His birthday, isn't it? Next week. Or a couple of days.
Yeah. It's 2 days after Prince, the singer Prince. Okay, so there's his sun in the top part of the hemisphere, which shows us immediately that he's a day birth, right? So therefore, we know that Mars is going to be the greater malefic for him. Now, one of the things to do when you're playing around with this concept is I would recommend that you look at the whole sign houses chart. And so what happens with whole sign houses is Mars is clearly, with no question, in the second house, okay, in his whole sign house chart. And so what we're saying then is that Mars is the more difficult planet for this guy, right? And the example is that it is well known, well documented, and through his own emissions, that he is reckless with his money. Completely reckless with his money. He'll, you know, he was buying bottles of wine that was costing him up to $60,000 a month. And not even aware of what that was amounting to. He had people rip him off, you know, because he just sort of trusted the wrong hands, so to speak. He's had a lot of money issues throughout his life, particularly or specifically through his own doing, through his own actions. And so this is just evidence to show us just how difficult this Mars is for him because he's a day birth. Now, the opposite to this, because we're not really talking about Mars today, but I just did want to bring up just the difference. If you are a day birth, Mars is the more difficult. And so this is just one example. If you are a night birth, Saturn is the more difficult planet for you. And this is an important point because this comes from Rob Hand, by the way, and Rob Hand, who is also a night birth. So Saturn was the more malefic planet for him. For those of you that don't know who Rob Hand is, you know, he's one of the greats that has been around forever. Basically, he's like a godfather of astrology, right? And I've met him personally, and you know, he's an awesome dude. He's a Sag, and he's very, very Sag. Anyway, what I'm about to share actually comes from his own mouth, based on his own experience, and here's what it is. If you're born at night, Saturn is your greater malefic, and the reason for that is because being a night birth means that if we think about Saturn is the planet that defines everything. If you want to talk about definition, that equals Saturn on every single level, right? So when you're a night birth, yeah, well, it's a Saturn word. It literally reflects everything about Saturn, definition.
If you utilize like just when you're, I mean, when you're doing the development of a picture, and you're playing with like how much light and dark you want, and how much shade you want on your picture. This is all definition, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's also about how you enunciate your words as well. Definition. Mm-hmm. So I find that these terms are very interesting for when we want to regulate or condition anything. We can recognize this is very pliable. It's not something which is so impairing or disastrous or sharp. It's actually, I'm actually able to work with this. This is malleable. This isn't stuck.
Are you talking about a person born during the day?
Just working with Saturn in general. Just picking up on your wording, but you go on what you say about him, about Saturn being more tricky in the evening.
Yeah. So if you're born at night, Saturn seems to be difficult because you struggle with definition, structure, and boundaries. To put it very simply. So
I'm born with Saturn at night time.
So am I. And those matters have been, 100% accurate for me, and we can add to that as well. If you go into medieval astrology relative to Fedaria periods, if you're a night birth, the moon governs the first 9 years of your life. And if you're a night birth, it is also said that pay a lot of attention to the moon, that the moon is so important if you're a night birth. And likewise, if you are a day birth, then your life, as it were, your personality, the way you live life is very much defined by the sun. Not that they're not important in both cases. Of course, the sun is important whether you're a day or a night, and of course, the moon is important whether you're a day or night birth. But the point is, if you are a night birth, Saturn is the greater malefic because the matter of definition, boundaries, and structures is something that doesn't come naturally to you. However, what does come naturally to you, and what perhaps you are gifted in, is the element of intuition, feelings, and feeling your way through the dark, as it were, having a natural affinity with the zone of life that doesn't have boundaries, the world of dreams. A very mundane, simple example to help everyone understand what I'm getting at. I'm a night birth, for instance, so that the moon's really prominent for me. First 9 years governed by the moon. That would be the same for you, Philip. Saturn is the more difficult planet, and it is because mine is angular. It's got a lot of things going on to it with it. But like for instance, I'll get up at night to go to the bathroom, and I don't have to turn on any lights. I can find whatever I want in the darkness. And I've always been able to do that since I was a little kid, So just this natural affinity and attunement with the nocturnal realm, like amazing with that. But when you're talking about the daytime, which is the sun, which has to do with definition and seeing, what's in broad daylight, then it's not a natural kind of place for you, as it were. Does that make sense? Do you personally relate to that at all? I'm just
I mean, I'll give you another analogy of how that's so accurate. So for instance, if you said to me, come to Australia, we're going to do an astrology event, and I'd be like, bloody hell, I've got to file for a visa, I've got to file for a passport, bloody hell, what about all these forms? I mean, I know how to get on a plane and pack that suitcase, we've already established it, but filling out the forms, no bueno, as they say over here. I don't know how to do it. It takes a lot of time and focus to really get through what we would call, very Saturnian word, the rigmarole.
Yeah.
Now rigmarole is what you do if you're a pirate, or for instance a fisherman. You throw your net out, and that's the rigmarole, and that catches all the fish. But we get caught in all of the Saturnian rigmarole when you don't know how to fill out a form for passports, when you don't know how to do the daytime Saturn stuff, the consensus stuff.
Yeah.
That's when people who are more into the spiritual, more into the etheric kind of style of things, which is obviously at least half of us, then we get snarled up in the rigmarole and we can get caught in the law. This is all very interesting wording, isn't it? But we can actually find that we're able to unsnarl ourselves from that when we learn how to do and play the games that Saturn wants us to play. When we learn how to go through a form, it might not be our vocational aptitude, for instance, or speciality, but you know, sometimes the world will teach us that if you sit down and do your due diligence and maybe have to really focus, and it might not be your greatest day, but it's worth it to come and do an astrology event with you in Australia. I would definitely sit down and get my paperwork done for that. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes we got to apply for ourselves, but I'd rather thumb around in the dark trying to get from A to B, because that's easier, right?
Yeah. I mean, but you're right. I mean, and the fact is that, you know, for the most part, when we're dealing with the world out there, we have to deal with the different systems, paperwork, you know, whatever it may be. There's no evading that really. So you kind of have to do your best to deal with it and work with it. My point simply is though that for daytime people, that's just a, you know, no brainer, right? It's just so natural. And for nighttime people, that part of reality, if you like, is not necessarily so easy. You know, it takes a lot of effort. I mean, I'll give a really silly little example of what happened a couple of weeks ago. I had to go and buy some screws, and I ended up buying 2 packets of the same screw. They were just different colors. And my friend said to me, why did you buy 2 of the same? They're exactly the same. And I'm like, I don't know. I thought they were a little bit different. See, there's the definition. I you know, that's just a really silly basic example, but so such a good example just to demonstrate this matter of Saturn and definition and things of that nature, even at the most basic little mundane level, right?
But yeah, but one more, which is for somebody who isn't me or you, and that is the people who are really great at doing the Saturnian stuff, the daytime Saturn stuff. They find it really hard to perceive beyond the world of science, for instance, into the spiritual realm. So they get stuck by the boundary of Saturn, and that gives them security and reassurance, but maybe as well through time they might get a curiosity. What's it like to be able to perceive beyond this boundary? And they might get beyond a frustration and find the solution to that in their process through their experiences.
Yeah, that's true, but I think that would also come down to whether someone has Saturn retrograde or not in their birth chart as well. Um, yeah, yeah, I think, you know, I mean, of course, we're making some sort of general statements, but this sect matter, as general as it may sound, it has proven to be very accurate, you know. Then, of course, the other components in the chart are going to, you know, flesh out the story, if you like, you know, of the soul and the person. It's not just one thing and that's it. You know, it's always a multitude, right, of layers upon layers upon layers in the chart. But just as a simple notion of, if I'm a night birth, I work very well with magic, with dreams, with moon, with emotions, with intuition, with feeling body, and just really sort of attuned, you know, to the emotional realm of things. It's a natural state. It's my natural mode of operation. Whereas if I'm a day birth, I am naturally attuned to the structure and order and definition and what is visible in the daylight, because I'm born in the day, you know. So they're just very interesting things to consider when you're looking at somebody's chart, including your own, of course, and you just want to get a better sense of which planet's going to give this person grief. Is it going to be Mars or is it going to be Saturn? And so, you know.
Also, the words that you're utilizing, like a set for Saturn. It used to be what Saturn was called, right, in the Egyptian pantheon. But also, like, when you kind of utilize the Saturn, obviously where it depends where it falls in your chart, it's going to set the scene, right? It's going to set the scene and set the standard for it. But wherever we've got Saturn, we also, if we can set daily standards, that can set the scene too. I mean, the traditional Saturn is going to set the only things that you can observe in the physical world, the mundane, the seeable ones. But you can also find that you can practice, for instance, a muscle on anything in life. But
Yeah.
if you're due diligent with it, for instance, it might be like we're practicing telekinesis. We might be together looking at your vase of roses and say, well, which one am I looking at? I bet, can you guess? And through practice, we could find that if we did it every day, we'd be able to strengthen that muscle of trust and intuition and be able to build it potentially. Because that set standard will set a whole new scene, and it might be something that we've never seen before because we've stick at it for 100 days or something like that. We've really built that muscle.
Yeah, totally agree, 100%. And that's why life is movement, everything is energy, and the birth chart is just a moment in time, and everything continues to move. And so when we're looking at our life journey, and then we're looking at transits and secondary progressions and whatever else, those movements of those celestial bodies are always opening portals for us to actually, to work through these different things. So a simple example, which is a personal example, I won't go into all the details, but so I've got an Aquarian moon and an Aquarian ascendant, and so I've had Saturn go over my ascendant and go over my moon, right? And given that I am a night birth, and given the night birth is very much described by Luna, the moon, and here I have Saturn, bang, squashing my moon. It was a very difficult journey, but the lessons, the growth, the clarity and awareness that I gained about my own necessary realization around boundaries, emotional boundaries, I'm talking about with my family, with my friends, with everyone, right? The amount of growth that came out of getting clear about that is you can't put a price on it. It was so valuable, and particularly because of the age that I'm at as well. If I'm 10 years old and I've got Saturn going over my moon, it's not going to be the sweetest vacation if you're on a vacation with mum and dad. It's going to be pretty shit, to be honest. But when you're at a mature age and you've got Saturn going over your moon, now think about this: Saturn going over my moon in the first house. The first house is an angular house, very powerful. The first house is your personal physical sense of self, your identity, your physical bodies, lots of different things. So that's an opportunity. For example, Saturn going over my moon, opening this invitation to me to learn more deeply about how to integrate this Saturn energy, because I'm a night birth as well, and it doesn't come naturally to me, So I've been able to reflect on that journey and see very, very clearly what I have been able to define, which is particularly emotional boundaries, for instance. And also Saturn going over the moon is learning how to look after yourself. It's nurturing yourself, taking care of yourself, and putting the right things in play, right sort of routines or diet or exercise or sleep or whatever it may be, learning how to define what works for you, right? That's Saturn over the moon. Sorry?
I appreciate that, because it's like, as you say, what works for you might not be what works for the next person.
100%.
And so it's like your own regulation. It's like as you say, you're being your own disciplinarian. Is this a word? Disciplinarianism.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. So it's like it's like, well, this is what's discipline for me. This is what's going to work for me. I've got the similar aspect in a sense now, because like this Saturn at 25 degrees is in a trine to my moon, which is in 24 degrees Libra. So it's stationed to come back to this point. So it's like, okay, well, obviously I'm gonna, and it comes back to 18 degrees through this retrograde. So it's only coming back by what is it, 7 degrees? But when it comes to station in October, this is going to be in a square to my Venus. So these are very powerful different points to bring security to.
Yeah.
Just like how you said your ascendant and your moon, I'm looking to find greater security in how I find my emotional boundaries, how I find myself at home, not just in myself, but actually with a physical foundation, which I can call home as well.
Absolutely. The moon, you know, the moon is what connects to our external physical home, and also the soul, heart deep inside, the security deep inside, right? So it's both. Yeah.
And I feel like as some, so for me also, like bringing greater foundation to my my work, bringing a greater cylinder or space holder for my work, for instance, getting this a website up there and these types of things, so that your reputation, it kind of speaks for itself, and you don't have to be concerned with certain things, because basically our skills and trades, they're there to basically provide for us because of the amount of investment we make. It's within our interest that they pay us back and give us nice home and nice food and nice opportunity to take care of our health and provide for ourselves. And so this is what Saturn does for all of us, and this is a transit which I'm going through very personally at this in these months, in these times. But what I find very interesting,
trying your moon.
huh?
You're lucky it's just trying the moon. Saturn trying the moon is a great transit, actually.
Yeah, I'm not complaining too much. Like there's certain things which I feel the squeeze on, but there's nothing which is imperishable. You could even look at it from two different ways and say, well, there's the choice to in which how you and where you want to find discipline. It's like you can't choose to discipline everything. You've only got so many hours in the day. So how are you? What do you choose to make your investments with? I mean, I've got a whole slew of cool creative projects in the fifth house, my Saturn transit, that I'm keen to work on. I've got a few books. I've got a guitar which I'm learning. I've been learning Spanish, and if I didn't have audio with the astrology as well,
Right. Let me just interrupt there, because what you've just said is really important, because you've really just described what it's like to be a night birth. You see that? You've got all these things, goals, dreams, plans, whatever you want to call them. And so this is where Saturn trine the moon can be so beneficial, because it can help you define what needs to be attended to right now, for instance. What's more important, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and some of these things are like quite unfathomable things. It's like, how can I bring structure to something which is like an idea, a dream, for instance, like a song or book? Well, what you need to do is think about something mundane and physical, and find how to bring your beautiful idea, your fabrication of your consciousness, into something which is going to be solid and even there beyond our lifespan. Like people who write books, they're praised for their books after they're dead and gone, because they're in a media, they're in form. How can we bring in our consciousness in form? That's very Saturn, right?
It is, and it's also timing, isn't it? And Saturn, of course, is the lord of time, right? So, our personality and ego can be quite insatiable, and we want what we want and when we want it, but the soul has a very specific agenda, and our duty in terms of spiritual awakening and I suppose connection, perhaps, is to ourself, from the level of really being really working on the alignment of our personality to the soul that we are, because it is typical that the soul and the personality are on a different page. And this is where esoteric teachings are very, 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 very powerful to help us get some kind of understanding about this integration of soul and personality, right? Because again, we want this and we want that and we want it yesterday, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Not when we want it, so it is about respecting, I think, the divine time, Saturn time, daytime, earth time is very, very different to divine time, soul time. Yeah. So
Well, that's one of the greatest things about astrology, isn't it? It's because it Saturnalizes the processing of these cognizant reflections, which we can see. I mean, we can see. Well, I know I've got, and everybody's got a great opportunity to push the boat out on their personal experiences and journeys this year, with Jupiter, Mars at this time, and Jupiter still in Aries until a few more months.
Yeah, actually, the next video I want to do is Jupiter in Aries, and I mean, we'll see if we do that together or not. But that Jupiter Mars, that is one of the most powerful conjunctions. It doesn't matter what sign it's in, really. But
well, I'm actually born with that in Pisces. And but you know that Jupiter. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I wanted to just check in with you on your thoughts on that. And so it's like, okay, so Jupiter is going in a sign every year, so it takes 12 years, whereas Mars goes through the zodiac over 100 weeks, which to my mathematical brain means to me that Jupiter and Mars will only meet in each sign once every 24 years. That seems to be quite correct in my mathematical mind, because
once every
24 years, Jupiter and Mars will meet in Aries and each of the signs.
Right.
Although Jupiter, for instance, will go into Taurus next year, by that point, the likelihood is Mars is going to be over there in Scorpio or something like that.
Right, yeah.
Although Mars will meet with Jupiter in Gemini in 2 years' time.
Right. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great point you bring, because, I mean, first of all,
it only adds to this opportune moment, doesn't it? Like Jupiter and Mars in Mars's sign, like we're not going to have it for 24 years.
100%. And Jupiter at the beginning, it's at the beginning of the zodiac. It's literally a brand new chapter for everyone. It literally is. And I mean, Mars Jupiter it's fortunate action. That's the best catchphrase for Jupiter Mars conjunction. Doesn't matter what sign it's in. Fortunate action. And actually, my mentor put that in my head, so I've got to give credit to him. He's very good with little succinct little captions for, planets and etc. And I'm glad it just came to me, because I love that expression as a simple way to really express, just what that really means. Fortunate action. It's a really, really, really beautiful cycle, beautiful conjunction. Look, of course, Mars has its issues in Aries, and we can't deny that. It's in rulership, yes, all of that stuff. But Mars in Aries can be, it can be really reckless. It can be dangerous. It can be, a bit crazy and whatever. But
I'll tell you, I prefer this week's Mars in Aries next to Jupiter than the one next week when it's next to Chiron. Although that's not to say that that's a bad aspect either. That can be really soothing and healing. It can bring a few things up.
And it can also aggravate, some pretty deep wounds. It can just, and sometimes we need things to be sort of activated in a way that's uncomfortable for us, because otherwise we won't go there, right? So, and furthermore, the Mars Chiron can also be the courage, right, that you need to initiate opening that little area inside you where you've got all these little wounds tucked away, right? And you don't want anybody to see them. You don't want to show them to anybody. You don't even want to look at them yourself. Well, Mars is the ultimate warrior of courage, and in Aries, that's Achilles, Hercules, like that's the archetypal warrior. This is the juice that goes into injecting the fearlessness that we need at different times in our life. I love this energy because it reminds me of my dad, who is Achilles, the ultimate archetypal hero, warrior.
Would you say it's a bit like someone saying, like, the energy from now until next weekend particularly I mean, like, this is kind of maybe obsolete for someone who might be watching this a few weeks, but particularly with this Mars and Chiron and this Venus and Uranus, it's a bit like, hey, I am who I am. I'm pretty gosh darn great, but hey, I've got a stain on my shirt. Can you see the stain on my shirt? I'm still great, by the way. Bloody big stain I've got. It's just like saying, hey, I'm okay with who I am, and I'm exposing myself so you can see who I am. You can see I'm okay. You've got to be okay with this.
Yeah.
Because I'm okay with it.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
And so that's kind of like that energy of like what you said, like exposing ourselves, because we might not have always been okay with that. We might not have been able to stand up and say, this is who I am and I'm accepting it. And so this is a very powerful moment of just kind of seeing ourselves and allowing other people to see ourselves as well.
Yeah, and just having the courage to be yourself. I know so many people that are terrified of showing who they are, you know, riddled with guilt and being self-conscious about this and that and the other and whatever, you know. So Jupiter, Mars in Aries, man, you know, you need to smash that. You need to go in that zone and just, you know, just really appreciate the gift of what it offers, which is the ultimate true sense of courage. I'm not talking about being a dickhead or a wanker, sorry to use that language, you know, like, in other words, what do I mean by that? I mean, going around and being aggressive to people and things like that. That's not at all what I'm talking about. That's not appropriate, right? I'm talking about really just getting into under your skin, inside, and knowing that courage is there available to you, right? Courage is such a big thing because life is difficult. For most people on the planet, life is not easy. Some people have it easier than others, and etc. I know that. But generally speaking, this third dimension reality, it's pretty tricky. There's a lot of shit to navigate, you know, and so we need courage. Life is dangerous. From the moment we are born, we could die during birth. That's how dangerous life can be. So we need courage, you know.
Well, so here's a good example of the courage in the way that we might not have been given a permission slip to be ourselves. And that could be, for instance, we might choose a different diet to what our family's chosen, whatever diet that may be. But we've kind of been curious about it. We heard about that diet being actually better for us. And yet we knew that we kind of really felt like admonished by the family or people which we want acceptance of, because we know that they don't align with this new train of thought that we might have had. And yet we're just going to be like, that courage to just step into it is this Mars Jupiter. So I just don't care about the old belief systems of acceptance, because I need to permit this for myself. It's leadership. It's moving into the direction beyond the experience of limitation and saying, I'm going to have faith in myself being okay.
Right. And so that brings in Saturn squaring the nodes.
That's potent, right? Because
yeah,
it's not only squared the nodes, but it also squared the lunar eclipse we had, which I think was an omen for this next whole Saturn retrograde.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And the square to the node started in March, and it's really going to be in play till, you know, around August. So fair bit of time, right? And everything you just described was very much Saturn, you know, the world of Saturn, you know, living in a family or an environment where what you do is not approved of for whatever reason that may be, and having the courage to break out of that cycle of suppression, right? Because that's what it is. It's suppression and conditioning. And in most cases, that the people who are playing the roles of your parents or caregivers or whatever it is, they're not consciously aware of the fact that they are suppressing, as it were, you know, your individuality and things like that. And you don't realize that when you're a child. When you're a child, that you're looking to these people who seem like giants when you're a little kid. An adult seems like a giant to you, you know, and you're looking to them for safety, direction, security. And so whatever they give you, you're going to take that, more or less. I remember, and this is a really fascinating point, and I don't know why I just remembered it, but I did. My mum had put such a phobia in my head about spiders that I was so freaking terrified of spiders my whole life. Like, I mean, like, not a normal scare, like a really full-on intense scare. And the last place that I lived in, the weirdest thing happened to me, and it's such a beautiful thing. A spider was in my bedroom. It was a black spider, which are known to be possibly quite dangerous. And I decided to leave it there. I ended up living with it there for a year. And we had this connection. Because I didn't get to the point where I was comfortable to go. I thought it was a female. I don't know why, but I used to call her, I used to reference her with a she or a her. I just felt her energy was feminine. And when I used to go to sleep, I would go and tap on the wall, which would indicate to her that I need her to hide. I don't want to see her. Like, I want her to go to sleep. I don't want to have one eye open, sleep with one eye open, thinking, is this spider going to crawl on my face? And we had this relationship, believe it or not, for about a year, where every day I'd tap on the wall and she'd go and hide. And then during the day she'd come out and I'd go and look at her occasionally. And that was that. And that actually healed my fear of a spider, And I mean, for years, and this is an example relative to a person who's an authority figure, for me, when I'm a child, who injects a toxic fear into my brain. I think it's toxic because I was just shit scared most of my life everywhere I went about spiders. I mean, I could tell you a story of when I was in Dubai in the Middle East, and it's a long story, so perhaps I'll leave it for another time, but it's got to do with the spider and having the hotel coming in with special cleaners and just all this madness because I was just so paranoid about this spider that I thought was in my suitcase.
Well, it's funny.
So yeah,
the trauma started with a story told to you by your mum, and so the story wasn't authored by you, but through the time that it took, you gain your own authority back, the authorization of your own story.
Perfect. That's exactly right. And that's exactly what I was trying to demonstrate with that example. And that's Saturn.
It took your boundaries to be set, though.
Yes.
The spider was in the corner of the room where you could see it in the day, and you had a contract with the spider that it was going to play ball with you. Not only that, but the spider's like very synonymous with the spindler, the old crone, Saturn as well. Very fine experience and perfect analogy.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what do you think we could share with people? Anything more specific around
this?
Wearing the nodes?
Specifically, I go back to the eclipse. The eclipse, which was the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and that was at 25 degrees. And I think Saturn might have even been at like a half a degree back by that point. But the point is that it was square. Saturn was square the eclipse and the nodes, and so I personally felt like at that eclipse, it was a time of reflection to suggest, oh, wow, I really have moved beyond some of these old shadows, doubts, and fears. They've been repackaged in a way which is empowering to me. However, there's all of these other ones which haven't yet been dealt with so much. But I did deal with all of these ones. They're outgrown. And so if I managed to deal with this fear, readdress it, repackage it, reformat it, support myself, gain my own authority, like you did with the spider on this experience, then these ones, which haven't been dealt yet, which are still on the table to be dealt with, can also be done. They might not have been, I might have never thought I could do with these ones, but as soon as I did these ones, I know I can do these ones too. And because Saturn was square the nodes within the eclipses and is now retrograde, and also to complement it in Saturn's other home sign, Pluto stationed retrograde just before the day before we entered that eclipse cycle. So it's again reformatting, redeterminizing the structure of our templates. So with Saturn moving backwards with the nodes and still going backwards till just a couple of days before our next set of eclipses, it suggests to me that we can remove any blockages and ascend beyond any limitations that may have been in our way, that we felt that maybe we couldn't deal with, but we clearly can. And so I think that's our journey. And the first thing about it, just to while we're there, to finish and encapsulate, is that the day before Saturn stationed retrograde, 2 days ago, Mercury stationed direct. And so the first challenge is our perception of can we, can't we, how can we think about it, how can we communicate ourselves through it, how can we nurse ourselves through it with good communication, being gentle rather than, you know, but also championing ourselves, about being too tough, about being too rough, but also being vigorous enough to say that we get the job done. All of that's inflection and tonology. And so with Mercury in Taurus, the very central sign of value, stationed in this tense square with Saturn, like they don't exactly perfect in the square. So we're not going back to the old way. It's about the innovation which we can offer to ourselves, how we communicate and find that we're able to do our due diligence, whether it's a soft nurturing voice or a tough you can do this voice. We can always find the right tone for it. And it's only complemented, for my last sentence, with Mercury also making a sextile to Neptune, which adds the lucidity, which adds the perception broadness to see that there are solutions beyond the confines of what might be regulated or traditional.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was very well said, Philip. Also,
Thanks.
yeah, no, that was really well said. I think also, you know, with Saturn in Aquarius, even though it's been there for quite a while now, as we can see, you know, it's at, you know, sort of the last degrees, even though it's, you know, going to be retrograde for a few months. But, you know, think about it. Saturn's not going to be in Aquarius again till, you know, around about 2050, you know, and it's really important that Saturn is in Aquarius now. Even just from our own sort of personal level, you know, finding our own authority about the Aquarian component of our psyche, you know, that is to be able to be different, to stand out, to not conform, you know, to rebel if you have to rebel, you know, whatever it may be, but sort of being able to be the authority in your own uniqueness, right? Uniqueness is a great word for Aquarius, and I think that's a big part of this journey with Saturn in Aquarius as well. And don't forget, we had the Capricorn Venus star point in January, right, which is ruled by Saturn, and that has so much to do with, again, our own authority and values, and being sort of committed to the relationships that we do want to participate in, or you know, being either more disciplined or committed to just anything that we place value on, really, you know, but having a sense of getting real about it, being real with ourselves about ourselves, right? And one other interesting thing that I just noticed last night, which just blew me away, and I have to kind of reflect more on what I could share about it, but I'll just, you know, mention what it is. The day that Saturn actually goes direct, stationary direct, which is 22nd of October, is the same day that the Venus star point goes into Libra. And that Venus star point in Libra is a turning point from having had the Venus star point in Scorpio for the last 100 years. So that next Venus star point this year in Libra in October is a big, 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 big deal. And think about it, Libra, relationships, right? And so I just found it fascinating that Saturn turns direct on the same day that that Venus star point happens. That's not a coincidence. I need to kind of, I'm the sort of person where I see something, sometimes I'll get a flash and it'll just come, but sometimes I just need to really process and, sort of reflect on something. And this is one of those things. But
as you say, the definition of that is very potent, because the last time that the sun met with Venus was in Saturn's sign of Capricorn, as you mentioned. And it's happening just before the next, like, days, that star point happening at 29 degrees of Libra, Venus's home sign, just a couple, like 2 days, or the day before the solar eclipse that takes place at the very beginning of Scorpio. And you say it's happening the day that Saturn stations direct. Ironically, I also noticed this. It's not quite as potent as what you just shared, but it's still quite beautiful in the poetry that is astrology. The day that Saturn comes back to this place where it's stationing retrograde today, when it comes back to 25 degrees and 15 minutes, Venus is at 29 degrees of Aquarius. And so Venus travels 120 degrees for Saturn to make it out of its shadow. So there's a bit of a game playing on. There's a poetic nuance to what's going on here.
Yeah. There is.
But that's a superior conjunction, isn't it? Because Venus isn't retrograde like it was in January when this happened. So this Venus star point is actually the new cycle for Venus coming back to the evening star.
Yeah, it's the direct BSP. Yeah, the direct, not the retrograde. So it's the evening star as opposed to the morning star. Correct. Yes.
I feel like this will be a little less frivolous, this Venus, a little less hot under the collar, maybe a little bit more within its graces.
Definitely, definitely, because in the next decade we're going to have this extraordinary shift from a Scorpio Venus star point into a Libra Venus star point, which is Venus ruled, and we're also going to have an Aries Venus star point move into Pisces, right? And so that's Venus's exalted position, right? And Pisces and Libra are definitely a lot more softer, in nature than Aries and Scorpio, right? Which is what we've been on for the last 100 years, right? So it's a massive, massive shift. We're really looking at a vision, a sense that would speak to being more hopeful, actually, about restoring actually the balance and beauty and harmony that's inherently already here in nature, right? That can never be taken away. But yeah,
Funny, we mentioned towards the beginning in the conversation a lot about the closing square aspect and the retrograde and the kind of similarity between the energy. And the second 7 signs, Libra through, often it's a bit like the backswing from the energy that's put into the physical, or the energy that's asserted. It's like what's coming back around. And so to have the Venus star point going into that Libra energy, and again in the Piscean energy, is, as you say, going much more into the spiritual realm rather than what we are doing in the physical. I'm trying to recognize that actually the most physical experiences are very spiritual ones as well.
Yeah, definitely. And just simply that, Pisces and Libra, are very complemented by Venus, right? Because Venus rules Libra and Pisces is her exalted position. They're just a much
You're not going to want to be in Mars's sign. Or, no offense to people who've got Venus in Aries, or as I do, Venus in Scorpio. You know, I know but there's all kinds of us out there that have got that kind of thing going on. And
yeah.
so that's interesting. But going back to what you said also a minute ago, back to Saturn, it's so very relevant what you said about how Saturn's not going to be here till, as you say, the 2050s, and Saturn was last here in the mid-90s. And so this ability to if we just look at the context of what was going on in the mid-90s, it was just before the big 1999, Limp Bizkit's out there, all of the Jim Carrey movies are out there, Robin Williams out there, everyone's going wild, it's the big boom, there's no fear about the bubble bursting, but it was due to. And so in a sense, there's this radical blossoming and blooming, but yet that's why there's been this massive suppression over recent years. Just before, it was as soon as Saturn went into Aquarius that the suppression started, because it was, in a sense, trying to, it's in the sense that we bloom through the suppression. It's actually beneficial for us because we're so bountifully broadening our awareness that even the attempts to constrain it help develop us even more, I feel. I heard a very interesting quote by a fellow astrologer this week, and it was talking about how something along the lines of 30% of people are kind of hypnotized along with the consensus reality, a Saturnian reality. And
what percentage did he give?
About 30. And then
I would say it's a lot more than that.
Yeah. Well, he said there's about 30, and then there's about the 20% of us who are very clear and conscious, and the other 50% or so, they're vacillating between the feeling okay to do your own thing and the conforming.
Right.
And how important it is for those who feel confident in areas to lead themselves, to show to those who might be umming and ahhing about it that they can lead themselves, because they are still deciding whether they feel okay about it. They're still recognizing their own, in a sense, to use the Saturnian term, backbone. Because it takes backbone to stand up for yourself. You can't stand up for yourself unless you reassured yourself with a backbone. That's just physical law.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a very good example too. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, just to kind of start pulling it all in, I suppose it's worth mentioning, and many people will be aware of this, but some might not. People who have planets in fixed signs, at those sort of later degrees, I suppose from 17, 18, right, through to, 25, 26, 27, whatever it is, are really experiencing the Saturn and these nodes in a very, very personal way, right? And so for those that don't have things in fixed signs, they're still going to experience Saturn somewhere in their chart. So it's still going to be very important. But it certainly is evident that, people who have planets in fixed signs are experiencing a more visceral or more intensified version, of what this Saturn really means, right? Squaring the nodes particularly, right? And Saturn gets quite a bit of a bashing, because it is a difficult planet. There's no question about that. You can't fluff Saturn up. You can't make it Venus. It's not Venus, it's Saturn. But it has, incredible gifts to give us, provided we are able and willing to step into the zone of working with Saturn, because the natural sort of inclination is to resist and project. So we just get it from out there straight back to us. And so the key with Saturn, in my opinion at least, is always, and this is the case with any planet, of course, but with Saturn, because it's such a, it's the planet that defines this experience of reality. So integration couldn't be more important with a planet like Saturn, to feel that you've got the right to be and live your life. You become your own authority. And this Saturn squaring the nodes is also bringing up, the Scorpio sort of past, if you like, the things that really need to be perhaps felt, right? Because I think when we decide to let go of something, finish something or whatever it may be, there's quite a big process involved in that. If we wake up in the morning and say, I'm done with that, well, you didn't make that decision just there and then. There's been a process behind that, right? So yeah, I just feel that this Saturn squaring the nodes, and as you pointed out, the eclipses as well, is a huge developmental process that will bring in a greater sense of freedom and autonomy, Aquarius. And also moving into Taurus, the integration of Taurus, which is learning to chill the fuck out, to just relax. Because Scorpio is just, so intense, right? So it's learning how to let go and relax a bit as well, right?
I'm going to say a vulnerable example for me. And that is that Saturn squaring the South Node in Scorpio, which is also where my Venus is. And so I can think back about how maybe potentially I was admonished for my innocence in exploring my sexuality when I was a young boy. Okay? Admonished and told not to go to school for a couple of days for the exploration in innocence and how I was doing it, right? As a young lad. And so then I had to pack away my exploration of said things. And because of I wouldn't want to be admonished again, And so it wasn't like I kept it all to myself for 28 years. But sometimes these things would crop up again. I'd feel admonished again for being the self. But I was like, I'm just being me. I'm not doing any harm. I know that because I'm a very conscientious person. And if I was just to say, for instance, something like, hey, Anastasia, I love the way you dress. You're very stylish. You make those clothing brands look priceless because of the way that you rock it, the way that you've got flair. That's a very, that's a forthcoming kind of gesture. Somebody might not take that as a compliment. I know you're going to take it as a compliment because, you are stylish. You're just being truthful and honest, right? But it's sometimes if you, for instance, if you rejected my compliment, then I might be scared to give that again, right? But really what we got to do is to say, hey, if we've been admonished and traumatized for our sexual expression or for a doubt or for a fear or something scorpionic in these tendencies.
Oh, we all have, trust me, every single one of us has.
This is a great time to regulate, to say, hey, I am good enough. I am allowed to be me. But yet also learning the boundaries of other people and keeping real with them.
Yeah.
And so it's finding what's, as you said, palpable. Palpable is something where you chew it up in your mouth, and these two different things, they come merged together. What fits, what works, what's the integration process of having had that experience to know that some people have sensitivities, we all do in different areas, and yet we're all able to be ourselves. We're all able to allow and accept ourselves to be our complete and utter selves, and that's part of our healing journey. And this could be happening with some people. For instance, I'll just use another example outside of myself. Someone might have been like, I'm gay. Someone might have been like, I don't know if I'm gay or straight, but I'm just me. And nobody should be shunned or shamed or have to hide themselves. This is what it is, because it's our power. It's our Scorpio. It's our trauma. It's our shadow. You can't tuck away a shadow. It gets worse. It gets impairing to the self. This is about bearing our shadow and seeing the empowerment within it and showing that actually that gives the permission slip for other people to release themselves from the shackles of feeling condemned and allow themselves to be their radical, complete selves. I think it's a very sensitive subject, but it's a very truthful and powerful subject of authenticity, which we are having the opportunity to plow through and find our gold.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you don't integrate the shadow, then it'll always remain the shadow. But when you do the work, it's no longer shadow because you're not projecting it. You know what I mean? So
it's very Saturn, isn't it? Because Saturn is the Pan of the whole land, and Peter Pan, which is about Capricorn, it's about Saturn. He would stitch his shadow back on, and that's him doing the shadow work.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful analogy. Yeah.
That's the way I see those stories to be written about Pan. Like the Pan goat god is like, it's the Capricornian dance between the shadow and the tail, the story, the rigmarole of that story, and the discipline of the template of the boy or the child or the being.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, because the matter is that if you go back historically, right, as we were talking about before we came on this recording, historically, it was, I think it was what, 6,500 BCE when the shift took place. That is from natural law, which is also referred to as the matriarch, right, into the patriarchal systems. And one thing I want to say about that, and this comes from an article I read through Jeffrey Wolf Green some time ago, which is fascinating to me because it brings in my knowledge and understanding about the goddess Vesta, right? An important point. But just to put it very simply, when that shift occurred, what was natural and normal, just to use don't really like to use that word, but what was natural? Natural is a better word, I think. What was natural?
But normal means square in Greek or in Latin, apparently. To norm is to square something, but go on, which is Saturnian.
Oh God, no wonder why I don't like that word. Right, okay. I got too much Aquarius to fit into a square. It's just not going to happen.
Too influential.
Thank God. Thank Goddess. Thank God. Thank you. No, I was just going to say that when that shift occurred, I mean, before it occurred, the natural thing in natural law was that, in other words, there was no such thing as monogamy. There was no such thing as marriage. There was no ownership of land.
Oh, now you're talking my language. Like
Right.
before being into astrology, I used to always say no ownership or no possession.
No ownership of anything. The only thing that people had ownership of was some very personal things, like perhaps a pair of shoes or a skirt, or something simple, right? But no one had ownership over land. No one had ownership over a person, right? There was no such thing as I'm marrying this person and I can only sleep or look at this person for the rest of my life. That did not exist. So,
even funny to say this, to bring this in as well, to the term of my son, my daughter. These are new terms. Like, we're not owner of our children.
That's a good point, actually, because back then there was, children running around everywhere and no one knew whose child was whose. No one would walk around and say, that's my child. It was a community, it was a sense of community. Everyone was just together, working.
The likelihood is that there'd probably be men with children with multiple women and women who would bear children from multiple men. This is my intuition.
100%. And here's the interesting thing. When the patriarchal system kicked in, one of the definitions, and here it comes, Saturn, ruling definition. One of the definitions of the patriarchal system, and a man being a man, was to identify that he had power through possessing land, whatever it was. And therein came this model of marriage, as it were, because I need to know who this woman has given birth to, because I need to pass over my power, my money, my legacy, my whatever, onto this child, for this child to carry it through. This all came into play with patriarchal systems. It never existed before. And so it's fascinating. And just one other thing, because I mentioned Vesta. Now, if you look into the mysteries of the goddess Vesta, which is this asteroid just here, who's just recently gone into Pisces, I love Vesta. She's conjunct my Mars, so she's really prominent. She's in a grand trine in, with other planets, and I just love her. I love the asteroids anyway, but she's so special because she's just so mystical and the most complex. But there is material written about her that pertains to her and the Vestal Virgins, as they were called, right? And in those days, these Vestal Virgins they would sleep with multiple men all the time. And the main reason they did that, and this is also historically documented relative to the past of what I was just talking about in terms of natural law and matriarch, you know, pre-patriarchal times, it was natural for women to actually sleep with multiple men because it actually helped them heal and remain calm. It balanced out that masculine energy in such a way, right? The Vestal virgins, that's what they used to do. They were priestesses and healers, and they used the sexual energy in that way for the purposes of healing, actually.
Well, from another perspective, which I completely colluding with what you're saying, and that is that, so for a woman to receive a certain energy from me, for instance, they're going to not receive that energy from anybody else. Just like how if they were to sleep with another person, I'm not be able to provide in the same way that the other person would. So that's the benefit of being able to have the alleviation and soothing nature of being able to be with different people. Likewise for the man to have a woman to take away their pain. It's very all about that. It's all about healing. It's all about security. It's not just about being frivolous and getting our jollies. It's actually a very practical outlet, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll say.
We can all be jolly about it. I could be jolly about it, but like what I mean is it's quite practical for our healing as well.
Well, yes. So I don't know if I'd use the word practical. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not saying it's not, but I need to just kind of sit with that word for a minute. But what I will say is this, right? I've just forgotten the point. It's just gone. It's gone. Hang on. I really want it to come back because it was a really good point, just based on these points we're making.
About sleeping with different people and gaining different awarenesses from the different
yes. Yeah, and you know what? You're so on point with that. I don't even know if you realize how on point you are, because when you go deeper into these matters of the matriarchal natural way of living, right? It is understood that, because back you've got to understand, we're talking a very, very long time ago. Back in those days, there were no books, okay? There were no preachers and teachers and whatnots. Okay, so it is understood that the sexual exchange between two people acted as a vehicle of imparting wisdom to one another through the experiences that they have attained through every incarnation. So every time a woman slept with a man or a man with a woman, there was this psychic, if you like, exchange going on, right? Which actually takes place with the fluid exchange that goes on in sexual intercourse, for instance. So yeah, there was, you didn't pick up a book and read about Mars in Aries back in those days. You just, you felt things, you lived, you observed, you witnessed, it was very organic and natural.
Example. So for instance, if my ex-partner, for argument's sake, had trauma with her father, and whatever reasons, we all have traumas with each of our parents, right? We all do. And so I might have had a situation or dealing with my father, which might be the resolution to her issues, and vice versa. And yet we might not have even had that conversation. But through the sexual exchange, through the chemical exchange, we actually find that maybe not instantaneously, but we gain awareness for us to heal and gain greater clarity and greater picture of resolution, greater resolution on the picture of consciousness that we have of our experience with that parent, due to the closeness and the bond which we shared with that partner. We might even not still be together once that fully comes into clarity. Yeah. But the exchange of key frequencies was done.
Yeah. Yeah, look, theoretically, that could absolutely be true. But what I would say to that is that and I haven't read this anywhere. This is just my own kind of sense, what I feel. I think if you are looking at a relationship, a connection, whatever you want to call it, through that lens, then I think the matter of having, you know, right intention is really important, right? As opposed to manipulating, taking advantage, you know, etc., etc. So I think, you know, when right intention and awareness is implemented but by both parties, that is, then I think those sorts of things can possibly be gained in much richer, you know, sort of levels. Yes.
Totally, especially if you are actually in an open, conscious exchange with each other, and you know some of your issues, you're working through them with the cycles, and you sometimes you might be like, I'm not able to be close with you this month, and then other times you might just be very romantic, and other times you're like, well, I want to be romantic and physical with you, but I'm not really feeling it, and so you've got to converse and exchange and explore the security levels and the consciousness levels which you're going to still process by getting close with each other. Maybe you exchange something ritualistic like a bath or a meal, and this is part of the process of gaining close feeling. And you might not even make love physically in that way that time, but you still exchange the energy. So it's all about the conversation, which gains the greatest clarity, and then everything else can flow and follow through on that state.
Yeah, communication is definitely primary, but I guess within that then as well comes the matter of there are different styles of communication, right? Some people are more verbal than others. Some people are more open than, you know, there's so much that comes into it. So it's, I mean, for me personally, communication in a personal partnership, whether it's professional or personal, is super important. That doesn't mean that I need to talk all the time. In fact, to the contrary, I don't talk all the time. I've got Mercury retrograde. I like to just chill out and say nothing for hours. I can sit, if I love somebody and I feel connected with somebody, I can just sit there and lay there for hours and not say a word and have the most intimate, beautiful experience, right? And then on the other hand, I can also sit there with an individual and talk for hours and hours and hours. I can accommodate both, but I do need communication. Can't be like, I couldn't go out with a mute, for instance, right? But yeah, I guess I was just saying that I agree with you that communication is really key and primary, but I guess it's really then about understanding the communication that one the communication style that one has, you know, because everyone's got a different style, and that's when you start looking at synastry. And, you know, is your Saturn on her Mercury? Because if it is, oh, you know, you know, just things like that. So yeah. Anyway, we probably should wrap it up. Any last sort of thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I've got two more things left to say about Saturn in Aquarius, and so
Sure.
that is that I feel like Saturn in Capricorn is the boundary of time. It's the farthest that I can see. It sets the physical world apart from what is beyond that. And I feel like the physical world is the start of creation. Everything bleeds out from the heart, from the garden of earth, if you will, right? However, the paradox is that we're originally from beyond the physical as spirits. I mean, the body can't get out the physical. It's the only place the body exists. I feel like this place, Earth, is the only place that you can manifest into a physical experience. And so our origins as spirits is beyond the physical boundary, beyond the boundary of space and time. That's Aquarius. And so what we're recognizing now is that we're able, as conduits, to anchor our awareness into physical reality. Because we've got a body, we're centaurs, we're spirits incarnate into the flesh. And so with Saturn in Aquarius, we can recognize that we've got so many gifts which we're able to bring through us. We've got so much awareness which we're able to be the conduits for. And that's our origins. What we're able to do with the scythe of Saturn and with our discipline is cut away from the old template that doesn't serve our connection to spirit, that doesn't recognize us, our genealogy or our origins or our ancestral heritage as spiritual beings. I feel that's what we're cutting away from. And it's not that we're just going to be done away with it. Well, everyone's awakening to the spiritual reality. It might be a minority of us that lead with this spiritual awareness, with this illumination of what darkness can offer us, as well as the physical realm, in a beneficial way for spirits to make the most of.
Absolutely, because you can't, the minute you demonize one thing or separate one thing, you've already projected it, you know. So it's really about recognizing that, I mean, this idea of splitting things up and making things right and wrong and black and white and light and darkness and good and evil, etc., is a Gemini thing. Essentially, that's what it is. And anytime anyone does that, all they're going to do is meet what they are actually projecting. That's what they're going to meet. That's going to be their experience, right? So it's there's nothing wrong with darkness or with light. It's really just that having an understanding of both exist, you know, and it's
how to be all inclusive without neglecting one facet or the other.
Yeah, it's just integration. That's all it is. It's just purely, I mean, I say that's all it is, like it's, you know, a piece of cake. It's not a piece of cake. It takes freaking eons, lifetimes, you know, to develop. Well, first of all, you've got to be able to recognize that possibly may be a truth, right? And then it's really about, okay, well, if that is a truth, how do I live in that way? How do I start to experience myself and life in this way? You know, so there begins the journey. And this has all got to do with the evolution of the soul. It's got to do, therefore, with Pluto in the chart and, you know, where Pluto is and what aspects it has, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, okay.
Okay, so these two more things, then I will stop. So basically, Saturn is a bit like we're within Saturn's realm. You could say that we're within ourselves here, a bit like an incubation for consciousness. It's a bit like Gaia, Mother Earth is a womb. And so that's a portal. That's like a whisk. That is integration. That is mixing it up. And so that's fully all inclusive. There's nothing outside of ourselves. That is wholeness. And when you recognize this type of level of empowerment, this is when we can get back to the realistic, most mundane, tricky things. So for me, next 5 months, I really want to work on my gut biome. I really want to work on the security of my business. And I really am excited to bring my passion projects into greater solidarity, like writing a book, doing the songs. And so the doubts that I can't, they're what's falling away. That's what's being cut free from. And the security is being offered by just simply showing up.
Yeah, Saturn trine your moon. That's what
So
that is.
everybody can do it. Like, this is the point, that everybody can do that, right? At this stage, we're all able to.
I would say that it's a timing factor. You know, like I really believe it's a timing factor. It might not be the right time for certain people to be initiating certain things. For others, it might be. I think it's I think it's wiser to perhaps suggest that it comes down to your own individual chart, right? Because, I mean, these are sort of general kind of statements, and whilst you're bringing it in reference back to your own personal journey, which is great, because there'll be someone out there that will totally relate to you, right? And totally need to hear that.
But I specifically mean it with regards to the aspect we see in the sky, because it's squaring the south node, where doubts, where hidden traumas, where shadows lay. And so it's about removing the doubts that I couldn't do the thing, whatever it is for anybody, whether it's building the house, whether it's selling the house, whether it's getting the divorce, whether it's having the kid.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing none of those things. I'm working on my gut health and writing songs and astrology books, but that's me. But for anybody else, they're able to do the due diligence and remove the block to move forward in a prosperous manner without carrying such a heavy amount of colossal weight they might have been carrying all their lives. They don't even realize they've been breaking their back.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only this life, but many other lifetimes as well. You know,
Too true. I mean, it's only every 18 years that we have the South Node go through Scorpio, and it's not that we have Saturn square in it, giving us this, as you say, this fantastic opportunity, this ledge for us to work with this in this time frame.
Definitely. And I think, you know, the South Node in the nodes in Scorpio period, that's not an easy, that access is actually a really challenging access, whichever way you look at it. But I think the beauty here, the gift here that is being offered to us, provided we are allow ourselves to be open enough and vulnerable enough, right, to receive what's offered here, what's on the table. Because what's on the table is, here's a whole bunch of stuff from your historical sort of backstory, if you like, that is really heavy, is really deep, is really dark, is, you know, it brings up all your deepest fears and personal limitations and all that sort of shit, right? And you have an opportunity to really look at it and to actually move away from it. We're moving away from it because we are moving into North Node in Taurus. And that
again, like, not to stifle you, but like to add to that sentence again, like the South Node is and Scorpio is the roots, and they're the most fertile part that are open for recreation, because it's like the composite nature of what's rotting, like the vegetable heap at the back of the garden. That's the compost heap, the grand composure of our traumas and all of these stories which you just mentioned, like our biggest doubts, our biggest insecurities. They're there, blooming full of potential and gold, like the Pluto, the combine harvester energy. Turn the soil over and see that this is an opportunity for us to have a new day.
Yeah, and all leading, of course, into Pluto going into Aquarius. I just cannot wait for that one. That's just, yeah, that is, I don't even know what word to use, but I can't.
I feel like it's like when we get that going on, it's like although it's going to go back, it won't be fully done in Capricorn until 2024, will it? But like that next year transition is a bit like the passing of the torch. We are inheriting the world. I do believe. No, believe is not my choice of word. I've got faith we're inheriting the world, but this is the graduation process that we're working through.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, actually. I like that. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'll take it. I'll accept it.
Yeah, no, I love the words that you use. It's cool. I like it. Yeah.
Well, maybe we can gather and collect again for the Venus star point next time around, like we did a few months back, and we can see between now and the next 5 months, just as Saturn stationing direct, how we've stuck to our word, how we've become the word, or if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah, that will be amazing. I'm very curious, just even for myself, to see how this Saturn retrograde is going to feel, because of just how much I've been through of late, everything that's happened. I mean, I've moved home. There's a lot that's happened, things that I don't wish to discuss publicly, but you know, my whole, the backbone, if you like, which is Saturn, the whole structure of my life has completely changed, completely. You know, I mean, I've mentioned this in passing I think in a previous video. I now live where the sun sets, whereas I used to live where the sun rises. And people might not think about that, but if you really think about that, I suppose living through it is probably the best way to really know what that's like. Everything is reversed for me, even where my bed is, even the side of the bed that I sleep on, even where Coco sits down, how she sits, where she's facing, where the shower is. Everything is just completely reversed. So I'm just finding myself just adjusting, you know, really adjusting to so many different things, from the smallest, simplest things, which are really important, especially.
Can I ask you a question then? So with regards to that, like, is there any of the slower planets like Saturn, which has shifted the side of your chart where it's transit, which echoes that kind of shift which you've had from east to west or west to east.
Well,
You know, like how Venus is always changing, so it's like too regular to condone. But you know what I'm saying? Like Saturn will spend 14 years one half of the sky, 14 years the next half of the sky. So did it just change?
Well, yes. The short answer is yes, because Saturn, as I said, you know, it went over my ascendant, right? Not so long ago. So it has left a whole hemisphere, hasn't it? Right?
So now it's in the interior for the next 14 years.
Yeah, exactly. And so here I am sort of restructuring everything in my immediate environment, the way my body feels, how I'm moving, how I'm doing things. There's so much to it. There's so many layers to it.
Beautiful, isn't it? Like how much of an effect the astrology is having through us.
Yeah, incredible, magic, just magic. And also when I moved, I just went into my 4th perfected house as well.
Very ideal.
You know, so I mean, yeah, the astrology is magic every time. It's really just about understanding it. You know, that's what it really understanding and understanding it. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to leave it here, and thank you so much for chatting with me. It's been awesome. It's been great just, you know, just bouncing back ideas and sharing our own different sort of insights and experiences. Hopefully everyone else, you know, finds it interesting, and, you know, they can gain some pointers through it. I'm sure some people will. So yeah, I wish you an awesome rest of your weekend, and let's definitely catch up, you know, when it's sort of gearing to changing direction, because I think it will be very interesting to follow up on how it's been for us individually, and yeah, we can share those stories.
Yeah, especially as with us did the last video of the Venus star point, and this was Saturn Sterling retrograde. That would be a great time to reflect on both of those points, obviously. So
Yes.
it's very interesting. I'm very grateful for you and your audience. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you for being receptive. Thank you for your massive contributions. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share with you. It's always so inspirational, and I'm sure over the next few hours, my brain's going to be coming up with all these ahas.
Yeah, no, likewise. Thank you. I love sitting with you. It's awesome. Yeah, it's great to connect. So we'll leave it here, and we'll check in again soon. So thanks so much, Philip. Thank you.
Absolutely a pleasure. Enjoy your moments, and I'll catch you again soon.
Thank you. Much love. Bye.
Much love. Cheerio.
Bye.